All right, so let's go through ADD, ADHD. This is for kids, and this is for adult onset ADD, ADHD. Where is this? Okay, what is it basically? So people talk about how well, you just can't pay attention. That's actually not accurate. So you take these kids, for instance, who have ADD, and the parents come in, they tell me like, oh, they can't pay attention to anything. And I'm like, well, can they play video games? I'm like, oh yeah, they can play video games for hours, but they just can't. They can't sit and read for 20 minutes. Okay, so the thing is that what we have to start looking at is that it's been explained to everybody wrong. It's not that they can't pay attention. It's that their brain can't functionally stay awake. So the reticular formation in the brain is what keeps the brain firing, keep the brain awake, and keep the brain functioning. When it starts to lose energy, which is ATP, not calories, again, this is why I get this big calorie thing. When it starts losing the ATP, what we end up starting to see is everything starts kind of shutting down. But it's not just the ATP, it's all of the hormones and drive from the adrenals and things like that. So epinephrine, norepinephrine, all those type of things. Here's the issue we've got to kind of recognize. And, this kind of goes back to the whole, this is why you have to be holistic in the way that you treat people. Otherwise, you're just going to throw drugs at people and never get anybody better and make them all worse. So we have to start with the gut. We're talking about the brain, but we're going to start with the gut. So when the gut gets all messed up from all the trash foods we've been eating, all of the chemicals in our food, water, and air, they're specifically designed to get us addicted to things, make us fat, and make us unhealthy so that we buy more pharmaceutical drugs. That plays a big role against what's going on. So your gut gets messed up, so you can't bring in all the neuropeptides, all the amino acids, all the vitamins, minerals, nutrients that your body requires to function. Then we have adrenal withdrawal. As the adrenals start to not get fed, they start producing less and less and less things like adrenaline. And norepinephrine and epinephrine, all those things that keep the brain awake. And so what ends up happening is that as the brain starts kind of fading into, low power mode, it starts trying to find anything it can to wake it up. So it's like, oh, something moved. Here's something, a squirrel. Like all that's just like trying to whatever it can in panic mode to keep you awake, which is why kids can play video games. This is why adults can doom scroll or play video games. The visual cortex is extremely responsive. And so if you see things moving, you see things going on, it's very, very primitive in the brain. And so it will start producing more spark, if you will, to keep the brain active. Look at that, look at that, look at that, because it's a fear-based thing. So what we need to start to do is need to start to realize that our bodies are wildly nutrient deficient. And so we need to start radically increasing nutrient density. Now, you're going to have to supplement for this. The reason you have to supplement to stay healthy in this country is because our foods are so naturally devoid of nutrients that you just can't function off the food we have. Some of the stuff, the organic meats and some of the vegetables and stuff like that are okay-ish, but not great. Like just Google will tell you, just Google nutrient density of oranges, nutrient density of apples, nutrient density of whichever you'd like today versus 50 years ago. And a lot of these things, it's like it takes 12 oranges or 10 oranges to make the same nutrient density as one orange, 40, 50 years ago. This is all by design. This is why they're using the chemicals they're using. This is why they're forcing big industrial ag. It's why they're forcing the small farms out. This is 100% the reason we need to start relying very heavily on farmers markets and local crops, because they're not going to be poisoning you just like the big industrial groups are. But this is the thing. And so as your gut starts falling apart, you can't feed the adrenals can no longer keep you awake, and so we start having issues. The other problem is that you have to understand how your body uses energy. So you give in 10 units of energy, and your body goes, man, we've got all this inflammation, we've got all this toxic load, we've got all this junk over here from our food, water, and air. We're going to split the energy we have. 30, 40, 50, 60% of it is just going to go to deal with the inflammation, just going to go to deal with the toxicity that we have coming in. And the rest of it's there to run your body. Well, here's the problem, especially with kiddos. Let's just start with kiddos. We'll go to adults in a second. When you look at kiddos, the vast majority of them are eating high trash foods. So high glycemic, high dye, foods with lots of dyes, lots of artificial junk, lots of preservatives, things like that come from a box or come from a bag for breakfast. So we get this giant insulin, the glucose spike, which is followed by a giant insulin spike, which then later revs up insulin resistance. But then it sucks all those nutrients out of the blood, all that energy, all that glucose out of the blood, and stores it in muscles, liver, and then creates fat out of it. But then it leaves nothing for the body to function off of. At the same time, we didn't give it any significant nutrients to produce neurotransmitters, to produce proper bile salts, to produce all the B vitamins we require. So we're getting tons and tons of junk, macro input, mostly sugar and trash, but we're getting no nutrient density. And so then we wonder, well, why does the body not work right? Why do we have to yell at these kids? And then eventually, why do the teachers tell the parents they got to go get them on Ritalin and Adderall and things like that because your kid's broken and your kid can't pay attention. No, your kid's been poisoned, and that's the issue. So changing the diet's gonna be major benefit, but you're gonna have to start supplementing with these kids unless you're growing your own food in a very, very specific, very pristine way, or you're getting very, very clean food. It's always funny because I eat a ton of eggs, and the way I choose where I buy my eggs is how dark the yolk is. If your yolk is light or like it's almost white or like a light yellow, it's not very healthy. The dark yellow or the orange yolks are really, really great. So as you start going through and you crack your eggs, look at the yolk. The yolk should be orange. If it's not, you need to find better eggs because those nutrient densities are very, very low. So we go to adults, and so we take a look at, okay, well, what are adults doing? Well, adults are going into Starbucks and they're getting milkshakes in the morning that have 2 pumps of this and 3 pumps of that. The caramels and all these things. They're massively high glycemic sugar. Mixed with some caffeine, and so you do really great for 3 or 4 hours, and then you start kind of trying to fade off, and you collapse. And a lot of people are going and getting junk food stuff for lunch, and so they eat it and they have a secondary crash, but they didn't have much caffeine and stuff to board off the fatigue, and so they have this giant crash between 1 and 3, and people are like, oh, well, that's just a normal thing. It's not normal. It's only normal because of the metabolic state you're putting your body into. And people are looking like, well, I got plenty of calories. Again, the body doesn't run on calories. So if you're not eating nutrients, you're not eating things that are going to produce ATP in a steady flowing fashion, you're going to have these big crashes. So that's where a lot of this comes in. So again, you're going to have to supplement for this. You're going to have to watch all the things that are in your body. Your body, and I keep saying this, and I don't know why people just get tired of it. Your body's a big chemical machine. It's a big chemical equation. If you don't get all the chemicals in, it cannot run right. If you don't get your testosterone, men and women where it's supposed to be, if you don't get estrogen, progesterone, or you don't get the rest of them where they're supposed to be, we're going to have a major problem. If we don't get in the nutrients our bodies require, we're going to have a major problem. A lot of people in this country, I would, if you're over 20, I'm going to say 65% of the people in this country have a serious position with insulin resistance. Whether or not we're seeing significant symptoms of it, you've got serious insulin resistance. And even if we're trying to eat good foods, because a lot of the foods that were deemed good for you by the FDA, the same guys who were monitoring all of our drugs, have been wrong for 50 years. And not just a little bit wrong. Every single thing they told you about food is wrong on purpose. There is no way you can look at this and be like, well, they messed up 2,000 or 3,000 times. No, everything they told you is wrong on purpose, because if you poison the food, you increase pharma profits, because people are like, well, our bodies don't work right. What should we do? We should go to the doctor. And once we're at the doctor, then we should, get the drugs to make everything better, because we didn't eat right. We didn't functionally move. And so now our brains don't work. So we have ADD. And so we have to take a drug to make our brains work. However, we didn't have to do this 30 or 40 years ago. I wonder why. That's the issue. And so, that's really what's going on. And so you can either radically change your diet, which is going to be helpful, and I highly recommend it. You can add in exercise, which is one of the reasons our schools have taken it out, because they recognize that if we exercise, it'll fix a lot of these problems, especially in children, but they don't want the problems fixed because they want to get the drug function. That's what's going on. And so, for instance, there's been studies on this. If you take kids, they did a study, they took a bunch of kids, like kids who didn't respond well in school, and they broke them into 3 groups. One group, they had just do nothing, that's your control. The other group, they get put on medications. In the third group, they had them go outside every hour and run around the jungle gym and scream and yell and wave their arms. And then they came back in. And what they found out was that the kids who they took out and physically moved performed wildly better on cognitive function, learning, and discipline. They were able to sit down, do their work, remember what they were supposed to do, and continue on. The guys who got medicated sat still really well, but they didn't learn and they didn't respond functionally. The kids they did nothing to obviously couldn't pay attention, couldn't do anything, couldn't learn, and were disruptive. So we've known for a long time neurologically, and the research on this is very, very easy to find and very, very easy to comprehend, that active physical motion radically changes the way the brain functions. So it suppresses all the amygdala functions, so it suppresses fear, hate, anger, terror. It increases cognitive function, increases cerebellar function. We know this for a fact. The reason we've stopped doing PE is so that we can start dumbing down and destabilizing our kids. So when you start looking at this as what are they doing to us, especially now that the Epstein files are out, it's a little bit easier to recognize that our leaders are actually trying to mess with us. You start recognizing all the things they're doing that are obviously wrong. And when they're obviously wrong, you have to understand that it's done on purpose. So that's really what's going on. So if you want to fix that, there's a bunch of peptide work I'd highly recommend for most of your adults. Hormone work as well for the adults. For the kids, you got to get them off all the processed stuff. If it comes in a box or a bag, you got to get rid of it. We got to start getting our kids back into the idea of eating better foods. And a lot of times, you get these kids who are like, well, they're eating the cereal because it's sugary and it tastes good. Great. Make them cakes and cookies and pies out of the right, ingredients, and they can have something that's sweet and delicious and fantastic. That's also good for them. So, long story, but we made a cake for a mom. We taught her how to make it out of butter, eggs, a natural sweet monk fruit erythritol blend, and a granite cacao and dark chocolate. So that's basically what and almond flour. That was what the cake was, and we gave it to the kids. The kids quit eating the trashy cereal, and a couple months later, all of a sudden, their ADD was gone. They were able to function in school because they got clean fats, clean proteins, and everything the body required to make the energy and make all of the neurotransmitters the body required to then function. The body was designed really, really well, and it will function really, really well if we give it the required nutrients and tools the body requires to then function. We've known what these chemicals are for a very long time, but we've been lied to and we've been altered so that we cannot get them. If you guys have any questions, hit us up. Otherwise, just real foods. Change all your diets to real food. If it has comes in a box or bag, probably not going to be what you want to eat. Guys, have a fantastic day. Thanks for your time.